Hello, everyone. My name's Tom, and welcome to my first live stream. I hope it works for people. Not sure that anyone's going to be here or if you can hear me. So if you can, please let me know in the comment or chat section below. But I wanted to give you an update on the car. No video this week because I just thought it was going to be the same as last week. I have been prepping the car for paint, and it's really the same routine over and over again. So I thought I would try something a little different. It's a chilly Saturday morning here. It's 8 a.m. my time. It's probably like 50 degrees outside, a little warmer here in the garage. But this is a Saturday, so I typically don't work on the car on Saturday, but this is the usual time that the videos are released. So I thought I would pop on and see if anyone is awake and ready to talk about their car or talk about this car. Um, I usually was, going to go over, this kind of three major things. I thought I would kind of go over, what the goals of this car are, and what the where we've come from. Where did this car start from, and then again, what's coming up next. So those are the kind of main things that I was going to cover. But please chime in if you're coming online. Let me know where you're calling in from and what you're working on, and let's just have a chat about cars, ideally. Um, this project for me was really kind of an accident. I wasn't really looking for a car. This was meant to be kind of a filler car. I think I've mentioned before I have another car that's going to be appearing on the channel very soon too, you guys. Probably in the next 2 weeks. My first Porsche that I ever bought, I bought it like I think 25 years ago, and it's gone through a major restoration too, and it's not done yet. So that car has been in the waiting wings for this car. So while one car was being painted, I bought this car and thought I would just sort of fill it in, and that's how it started. I picked this up on Craigslist. It's been a little bit. I think it was 2017. I bought this car, and this is been kind of a long journey, but I'm going to share the next car with you in the next couple of weeks. So that's something to come here on the channel soon too. The goal for this car has always been a budget build, and what I mean by that is I picked it up for a couple $1,000s. I've shared all the costs on previous episodes, but it was like a $4,000 car. Essentially, no one else wanted it. Nobody else thought it was a viable project. I wasn't the first person to see it, but I was the guy who kind of swooped in and thought I could take it on. Um, and the goal of the project has always been to build a car that drives for under $10,000. That's been the motivation, and I've kept track of all the costs. I think I'm close to that target. Um, I haven't spent a lot of money on new parts, and I'll be doing an update on the cost very soon. Once the car gets painted, I will be doing an update on the costs. And then the next thing I want to cover is, where we've come from, and some of the modifications that are in this car. I'll cover that, and then I want to talk about the future of the car and the channel and where we're going to be going next. So three major things: kind of the major goal, where we've come from, and then where we're going to be going. So, like I said, it's definitely a budget car. So the only new parts that I've picked up for this have been, I think it was the suspension pan. One of the fender attachment points is brand new, and the paint. I mean, the paint has probably pushed me. If anything pushes me over the budget, it's probably going to be the cost of the paint. And I'm not using expensive paint. There's people that in the Porsche community, they swear by the Glassrip brand or the German paint brands. PPG is common where we live, and those are pretty expensive products. I'm not using those. I'm keeping the cost as low as possible. And then all the parts I've collected for this car have come from swap meets. They've come from just middle of nowhere. All things that have been either used or taken off other cars. And so I've taken extra lengths to try to find parts that are affordable and that could be fixed for the purpose of the budget of this car. So let's take a moment. If you guys are coming in to the live stream, please take a moment and tell me where you're calling from. Looks like there's a few of you guys here, which is awesome. Looks like one of them is well, two of them had the same last name as me, so that's funny. My family is just waking up, so they're probably laughing at me. Looks like we have BMW Sean is calling from the UK, so he's probably already gotten quite a bit started. We also have Thomas from Austria. That's cool. We were just in Austria in October, so we had a great time. Such a beautiful country. I couldn't help but think about importing my car over there and just driving on those country roads. It was so beautiful. We had a chance to ride bikes on some of those cool roads, and it was just an amazing country. So different than what we're used to. Chris Fisher is coming from Connecticut, and he's saying it's already 60 degrees there. I guess you get the advantage that you have the time change. I think it's going to be 60 degrees here soon too. We'll probably take the family out. Probably, I think my wife and I are talking about going on a kayak ride. So hopefully it's going to be warm enough here too. We have Nasami is working on a Porsche 912 1966. It's really cool. I love all these cars. Actually, the 912 is sort of near and dear to my heart. I mean, my first car is a 356. Engine's the same, so I have a few extra engines of 912 and 356 engines. And someone else, Thomas, is asking about the engine plans for this car. So definitely want to go over that. It's going to be work in progress. As you know, this car came without an engine, and that's kind of good news and bad news. The good news is it's open season to pick whatever engine I want, and but the bad news is that can take a lot of time and a lot of cost. So I do have a plan for that. I'm going to cover that in just a second. Mizami says, "Are you happy?" I don't know. Yeah, I'm happy that you guys are hanging out and joining on the live stream. Definitely a different approach because I just wanted to change it up. This has been a lot of sanding, a lot of the same content every week. So I'm happy to do something a little different. Hopefully, you guys can all hear me okay. My wife says she can. That's good. Swap and LS. Yeah, there is a few of you guys. I've seen the projects. I know the Subarus are common, LSs are common. My dad is a street rodder. He has been a street rodder since he was a kid, and so I grew up around all of those kind of hot rods, American Iron, and I love the influence. I love that whole culture. So in Southern California, that it was like the heyday of automobiles. I mean, this is the 50s, and the 60s is when the whole idea of customization began, and it was just an amazing time. So I've heard about it a lot from my dad. His influence has definitely been strong on that, and of course everyone put in a Chevy 350 or anything like an LS now. It's definitely awesome. But for me, I want this car to be a not a period correct restoration, but I want it to be a Porsche still. And to me, one of the things that make it a Porsche is the engine. So I do have big plans for the engine. It's going to be a long journey. So it's gonna evolve. I'm not going to have um, an end date for this car to be finished. It's probably never going to be finished. And the engine is one of those things where it could take a while for the engine to develop into its final mode, or whatever engine ends up being in the car. That will be It's going to take a while for the engine to outdo some of the modifications that I've done to the chassis. So um, we'll definitely get into the engine here in a little bit. So thank you guys for chiming in. I just wanted to talk about where we've come on this car. So I guess it was a little more than 2 years ago. This has been a pretty long journey, but 2 years ago, I brought the car home, and this was before I started the YouTube channel. It had some accident damage, and I took it upon, excuse me, I took it upon myself to really straighten this thing out. It was damaged on the right front, and the pickup points for the suspension were off, and there was like wrinkles in the inner structure right where I'm sitting, and then all the way into the front longitudinal on the right. So I devised a lot of frames and systems to stretch and pull, and I had to cut the chassis to really weaken it so I could stretch it out, get it into its final position. That's all before I started YouTube. I did take some pictures, but unfortunately, I lost the phone that a lot of those pictures were on. So I did used to have pictures before. Unfortunately, I just don't have them anymore. I'd be happy to share them with you guys if I did. I'm not trying to hide anything on this project. It was a wrecked car for sure. And then from there, I, uh, I was going through all this creative techniques on how to stretch it out, and I used hydraulic rams. Like I said, I had lumber underneath it and leveling techniques. I showed you a little bit of the leveling techniques when I was doing the suspension pan with the water system. So after all of that, I thought this is probably a good place to start a YouTube channel, because I think these DIY methods could be shared with other people. Uh, how to do it from your home garage, and not to get overwhelmed with the bills of restoration shops and the weights and all the time and money and strain that goes along with that. I thought I would just dive in, show you what I'm doing, and hopefully inspire other people to do the same. So that's been the genesis of the channel. Ever since then, we got started on fixing rust. We fixed rust in the suspension pan. We did a ton of modifications to the suspension. We backdated it to an earlier look. This car is a 1974. I kind of like the long hood look, which is 1973 and older. So that was a lot of modifications. Most of those parts were built by me by hand. We went through the process of getting the panels to fit. I think that was probably the first big milestone on this car, is just getting all the swap meet parts to join up and meet together. That was a big milestone, because nothing on this car fit, especially since it had been crushed. Uh, Gaps and things had been really far off. Then after that, it's been kind of the painting process, and so that's kind of what leads us up to today. We have an appointment, you guys. We have I think it's next Wednesday, next Thursday, probably Thursday. I have a appointment booked to take this car into a paint booth. Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. So yeah, you guys, 5 days is it. I mean, I've been waiting for this moment for so long. 5 more days. It's going into a paint booth, and I'm going to have to transport the car pretty far. Taking it to Hesperia, that's about a mile, and it's about, let's see, about an hour and a half away. So it's going to take a freeway ride, borrowed a trailer. I'm taking it to a friend. Actually, it's sort of a friend of a friend. He has a paint booth that's kind of busy right now, so we're taking it to one of his friends' paint booth. And these are professional shops. This is going to be a very large paint booth with downdraft filter capability. It's going to be awesome, and I'm going to take my camera along with you. The one unfortunate thing about the paint booth This is maybe one way or the other. It's your the way it works out is I may not be the one to spray the car because, and that's the good thing. I mean, I'd love to spray it. I think I've learned enough, sort of playing around with the primer and some of the spraying of the inside. I think I could do it, but the because I'm not the shop owner and all that, it's probably going to get sprayed by the person who owns the shop, and it's because it's his equipment. I totally understand it. I thought about spraying the car here on this garage, but it's just too much risk with the environment. I have neighbors on both sides. My family's right here. I just don't think it's safe to spray the entire car in the garage, even if you make like a makeshift paint booth. That keeps the dust out, but it really doesn't do anything for keeping the fumes away. So that's the reason why I'm taking it to a booth. It is going to. I am paying for the booth, so that is going to add to my cost. But I think in terms of the overall quality and just getting it done in a quick period of time, I think it's the way to go. So that's what's happening, you guys, in just 5 days. Next Thursday, which is cutting it close for next Saturday's video, it will be painted, and really excited. It's been a big milestone for me. I mean, painting is not my favorite part. It's about so much effort and so much time consuming, and then there's so much that could go wrong. So I spend a lot of my energy and time thinking about what is what's the right dry time, what's the right sequence, what's the right temperature, what's the right process, how do you sand it in the right grits, and I'm pretty new at this, so I probably overkilled it, but it's such a milestone for me because it really defines like the project. This is what you've built up until now, and then from here's how it goes into the painting process. And then once it's painted, you don't get to kind of go back and modify stuff. It's like that's now behind you, and this is in front of you. So I haven't put a lot of thought into what's happening in front of this because I've been so focused on just getting it painted. I know a lot of you guys want to talk about the engine. Let's take a look at the comments and see what you guys are up to. If you haven't already told me, tell me where you're coming from and what you're working on. So I have Nikos is working on his car and experiment with his sister's car. So that's brilliant. Make sure you dive right in, but also be smart about it. Be practiced and be careful at how you're going to tackle it. I definitely advocate just kind of diving in. But if it's an expensive car, you may want to definitely practice. And I've always practiced on parts for a long time. Andy Prill, who's known in the UK, worked on Nasami's engine. I think, yeah. All right, all right. Yeah, that's your first name. I think Ari is the one with the 912. And so yeah, Andy Prill in the UK. I've heard good things about him. The 912 engine's a great engine. So Jarek is saying, don't overkill the engine. Keep it mild so you can rev it out and on the road. So, yeah, that's good advice. I mean, building a race car engine is sometimes not great, especially if you're driving it on the street because the rev range is all wrong and you really can't enjoy it on the street. So I totally agree with that. You don't want to pick the cams, you want to pick the induction so that it's not super high strung and you can't even get out of a stoplight, so or go up a hill. Totally agree. Long Paul says he likes the color choice, so thank you. I mean, this is it's a vintage color. It's a Porsche color. My son Zachary, he hates it. He said it's mustard yellow. He jokes with me all the time, and he's one of the reasons why I almost didn't paint it that color. But He's 14, so maybe he'll learn to like it. I don't know. Um, Jeffrey Lopez is saying why. I'm not sure. Maybe I missed your first comment. Let me know what your question is. Yeah. So yeah, when I travel it, it's going to have to be recleaned again. So that's a good point. I am going to shoot the sealer coat here in the garage. I'm going to shoot the sealer coat or two coats of sealer, very light coats. That's going to really sort of protect the car a little bit as it's transported. And then it's going to get dirty, of course, on the freeway. And then it's going to get, wiped down. And I'm kind of waiting to do the sealer coat. It's going to be sort of day 1 or 2 before I take it on the road trip. And then it'll get wiped down and then re-sanded again with 600. So it's going to have, I totally agree. It's going to get messy. And I don't have an enclosed trailer. It's going to be an open trailer. Although some of the doors and stuff, like most of the parts that are taken off, I'm going to paint it all separate. Those parts will be wrapped in blankets and probably put in the back of a truck. So only have to really worry about the tub getting really, really dirty, but I totally agree. Don't wet sand past 400, 600 at the most. Um, yeah, I don't use wet sanding on the 400. On the 600, I do. And we talked about this, I think, in some of the comments before. The 600 with the water, I mean, there's concern that the paint will absorb the water. I'm painting it in the high desert. So if you're familiar with California, Hesperia is in the high desert. The humidity is very, very low. It's like 20% at most. So the water, it gets evaporated out very quickly. Plus, it's going to be in a heated booth, so we have the ability to bake the water out. Not too worried about the water. Ace saying he's in NorCal, learning and planning for something in the future. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it doesn't. It could be any car. I love all cars. In fact, I would love to someday, venture away from Porsche and work on something else. So I plan on sanding the sealer. Yes, I am sanding the sealer. This is SPI. Basically, it's just a thinned out epoxy primer, and I've learned that the epoxy primer is very sandable from SPI. SPI, I've actually contacted the owner of SPI and through their forums, they recommend sanding the sealer with 600 if it's the day after. So one of the reasons why I'm using the sealer is because it is it's supposed to improve the adhesion. The products I've used up until now have been all SPI products, and the manufacturer says you don't actually need a sealer, but if you want to improve adhesion, they say that the sealer is the best way to go. And that epoxy primer is really tenacious. It sticks to everything. So I sort of agree that because I'm transporting it across the freeway, the sealer is a good idea. And sanding it right before you spray it is what the manufacturers recommend. So that's what I'm going to do. Nico said he sprayed some base coat last weekend and couldn't get it to spray the clear right after it flashed. I plan to clear coat tomorrow. My thought is to scuff, apply a coat of base, and then 3 coats of clear. Any thoughts? Um, yeah. So the idea that I learned when I sprayed the color in the car so far is that you definitely want to let the base coat dry. Um, I let it dry for I think it was over an hour, and then I didn't wipe it down with any solvents. I just sprayed it with some fresh air, and I put the clear coat on it. So if you've had a problem and you couldn't get the clear right away, then I think you have to scuff the clear, or no, I think you have to scuff the base coat and then apply new base coat and then apply the clear after the base coat is fully dry, like an hour or two. I think there's like a 24-hour window. So I'm using the Matrix brand base coat. It's very, very inexpensive. I think the whole gallon is like $240. And yellow is also a different color. It doesn't cover very well. So it's an inexpensive paint, which probably doesn't cover very well. And it is it's yellow. So you have to make sure you get enough on there. But I think you're okay if you if you scuffed it, applied another coat of base, and then put the clear on. I think that would work. Yeah, Sikkens Matrix is pretty similar to PPG and costs less. Yeah, that's what I'm using. I'm using Matrix. Like I said, every color is a little different in terms of price. Some people say the yellow is more expensive. I think the yellow for me was like $240. Liberty, Utah, originally from Southern California. So that's awesome. What part of Southern California? I've been in California all my life. So I have traveled a little bit, but California has been home for me for so long. BMW Sean says he used some of my tips on this 930 Turbo. That is a cool car. I love the wide body and I love the engine. So we kind of covered, the goal for the car. Told you guys budget build. We've kind of covered, where we've come to now. I talked a little bit about the 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 accident repair, the rust repair, the modifications, the backdate, and then what's next. So the next step is to make this car drive as soon as possible. I've really focused on, I talked about in one of my videos before this kind of triangle of like quality and cost and speed. So I've focused heavily on quality and cost. So I've kept the costs down, I've kept the quality up, but it's taken me a really long time to get the car where it is today. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. After it's painted, I'm going to change that triangle. So I'm going to work on still keeping it low cost, but I'm also going to try to make it drive as quickly as possible. So my view, things are now in the bolt-on stage. So the platform is finished, it's painted, it has all the modifications I put into it. Now it's a matter of bolting stuff on. And I'm going to choose to bolt stuff on like in multiple phases. So phase one is to get the car to drive as soon as possible. So I'm going to sacrifice and cut a few corners on quality just to make it drive. But it's what I think is reversible quality because I can go back and update it later. And that is the real method on the engine, you guys. So the engine, I don't have my dream engine, but I do have a temporary engine. So I told you guys in the beginning that I've been a 356 owner for a long time, and I have collected tons of parts for that car. One of the engine for that car is actually out of it as well. I have an extra 356 912 engine that I'm going to put in this car. So that may be disappointing for some of you guys. Some of you 912 fans are going to think like that's the best thing ever. But that's the plan. So I have a rebuilt, so not by me. I bought this engine probably 15 years ago, and it's supposedly a rebuilt engine. Um, and so I'm gonna put that engine in the car. Now there is some complications with mating it to the 915. So I think there's a company in California that makes a flywheel that will allow it to work with the transaxle. That's going to go in the car immediately or as soon as possible once it's painted. So I'm going to work on the brakes. I'm going to work on the fuel system. I'm going to work on the engine. And so with those three things, I have enough to make the car drive. Now, that allows me to work on a bunch of stuff. It allows me to work on the oil lines for the 911 engine. It allows me to figure out what else I'm doing to the engine itself. So I will get a engine. Preferably, I'm looking for a SC engine, a 3-liter. So I want to build like a short stroke 3.2. So a short stroke 3.2 is sort of my dream. and I want to keep the aluminum case. I don't want to mess around with the magnesium. I'm starting fresh, so the 3 liter with the earlier heads, probably from a '78, is sort of what I'm looking for. So the goal is to drive the car, take all the little bugs out of it, make it somewhat drivable, sell the 912 engine, and use that money to buy a core '78 SC engine, and then that will be the basis to rebuild. Now the order is probably different. I'll probably leave the car drivable, and I intend to make that part of the channel too. Like, I think this channel has been largely focused on the technical aspects of me in the garage. I live in Southern California, so there's events every single weekend or every single week, for that matter, where I want to take this car on adventures and have the channel be part of that too. So we'll hopefully in the future, once the car drives, have the ability to do more interviews and local drives and events. So that's that's the method, you guys. So I think this is 2020 already. I think the car is going to drive, this year. I mean, those are kind of the famous last words, like how long is it going to take to get it to drive? Well, I think if I sacrifice a little bit on the parts quality, I think I can increase the speed and keep the cost low. So when I said a $10,000 target, yeah, that includes the price of the car. It also doesn't. It includes the engine, but I bought that engine a long time ago, so that's like a $1,500 engine. Today's prices, I think you can't buy a running 912 engine for less than 5,000. So that's a little bit of cheating in terms of the budget, but it's really what's happened in my case. It's what's happened, and I want to use that engine. I want to sell that engine, actually. I don't need like 3 engines. I have a 912 engine that is in the 356. I have a numbers matching engine for that same car that is in pieces. I have a rebuilt 912 engine that is going to go into this car. I will probably be taking the heads off and just double checking the quality of the rebuild, and then I have a lot of parts. So I have all kinds of parts to make an engine. So that's the plan, you guys. I don't want the project to be stalled forever while the engine gets built. It's just it's these engines are not simple. The 911 engine is difficult to machine, and it takes time, and the parts. It just takes time. So obviously, you guys know I watch Home Built by Jeff, and his engine. I know he's in Australia. His engine was rebuilt just down the street from me. I'm in Huntington Beach. He's in Costa. The place that was rebuilding his engine, I think it's Performance Developments or something, is in Costa Mesa. So it's like 10 minutes away. And that was a long process. I know they put a lot of new parts into that engine, a lot of research and development, but that is par for the course, especially if I'm doing the work myself. And it just takes years, and I don't want to have this car sitting idle for years, so I can have my dream engine. So, this might be an opportunity for me to have a car that drives this year, maybe even before Home Built by Jeff. I don't know. It's not going to take much to make this car drivable. I'm going to leave the suspension as it is. I'm going to slap on some coilovers because I could use the torsion bars too, but I'm going to put the suspension in. The brakes are going to be pretty special. The brakes are coming from a company in the UK, and they are amazing custom brakes. The calipers are ridiculously cool. So that's coming really soon, you guys. There's more pistons in the brakes than a Lamborghini. So that's cool. I'm going to be doing some custom master cylinder stuff too. So I have independent control of the front and the rear brakes. So that's definitely coming. And then yeah, just want to make it drive with the 912, and I think it might drive as a 912 for a long time. So I'll definitely be doing some road comparisons before and after, before the 912 and the 911 engine. And like some of you guys said, I'm not going to go super crazy on the 911 engine. So when I start to invest in the 911 engine, that's where the budget sort of goes out the window. And a lot of you guys have sort of said there's no way you can build a car for 10,000. The engine is going to be more than 10,000. I mean, there's no question about it. So the budget at that point sort of goes out the window. But I'll have something that I can drive for a few years and then really work on the engine. So my favorite part of this build process is the engine. It might not seem like that because I've been working on the fabrication and the painting. My favorite part is the engine. So I'm a mechanical engineer. Some of you guys know that. That's what I love the most. I understand the the uh, the the building techniques, the theory behind it. That is what I get really excited. So yeah, let's go back to the comments. Marcos, the 3.2 short stroke is a great engine choice. Yeah, I think most people agree. Like it's the short stroke, so you have high revving, and then 3.2. I think that's the largest you can go with the pistons and cylinders before it's like major modifications, right? I think they just slip right in. Um, I think it's a great engine. It's obviously the SE engines were considered bulletproof in the day, and it doesn't take much to get like 250 horsepower. That would be plenty for a car that is pretty light. So you'll know that this car didn't come with many parts. I don't have a lot of weight to put back in it, so it's basically going to be a pretty light car. I have not gone through extensive or expensive modifications to make it light, like with aluminum panels and all that kind of stuff. But just because I don't have all the parts to put back on it, it's inherently going to be light. It's going to be noisy and probably a little bit annoying when it's first driving, but those are the kind of things that will evolve over time. I'll add a little bit of weight just to keep the noise down, but the interior is going to be minimal. I don't have the interior. I don't have all the little trinkets that go for the interior, and it's going to be very very light. So it's yeah, it's going to be 250 horsepower on a SC engine is reliable. It's pretty easy to obtain. I definitely plan on using individual throttle bodies and probably an electronic ignition as well. So it's going to be pretty reliable, and I think 250 horsepower is pretty easy to obtain. Um, but things I think might evolve too. You don't always know what's going to happen, but things could evolve into more power as I get more time driving the car. And this is a personal car for me. I don't ever plan to sell it. You know, cross my fingers. This is not something where it's like you finish the project and you just want to do another project. This is something that I want to keep learning from, and I want to keep driving it. I want to keep updating it, and like I said, the car will probably never finish. It'll be constantly evolving into what I think is the perfect Porsche, and it's what I've decided from the very beginning. That's what I want to put into it. I want to put in the modifications to the chassis that will allow me to tinker with it for years to come. That's been the goal, and building everything myself has kept the cost down. So you can sell your 912 power plant to fund it. Yes. So that has been my method from before I even bought this car. Like I have a part stash. I'm constantly buying and selling parts. That's how I sort of pay for this hobby. I have a spreadsheet of all the parts that I buy for this car on the 911, and I typically will buy too much. I buy things I don't even need. You guys saw I made an episode about those Deep Six wheels. I bought those. I didn't even. I'm probably not even going to use those on this car, but I bought them because they allow me to trade for the wheels I do want, or they allow me to like all that suspension components. Most of that's been sold, and it allows me to stock up some money. I make profit on those parts that I buy, and then I keep the best parts for my car, and then I move everything else on to someone else who needs them for their car. And I don't sell them as junk that will never be used, but it helps somebody else, and it allows me to keep trading to buy expensive parts. So that's how I will eventually get the 911 engine I want. I will use the 912 engine to sell it. That gives me the money to buy a 911 engine. Also, you're saying why not use the PMB brakes? I definitely could, except for I don't even have the stock brakes. So this car came as a rolling shell. Uh, it it didn't even come with brakes. So I have some brakes that are cast iron brakes that I picked up on some of these previous parts cars, but I'm not going to use them because I don't need to. I originally I was going to go for the lowest cost route, which is the Boxster brakes. So Boxster is the Brembo for a late model like 1999 Boxster setup, and I actually have those calipers because early on, like just after I bought the car, I started buying parts, and that was one of the least expensive ways to put brakes on the car. And those that Boxster brakes are good. They, especially if you use dual master cylinders, you can tune them in to where they work really well. The Boxster brakes do require a 16-inch wheel, and I want to have the option of using 15-inch wheels on this car to kind of keep it into that old period look. Um, so the guys in the UK, which aren't cheap by the way, they have offered some brakes at a price that I couldn't resist. So to have six piston calipers with less than the cost of the PMB brakes, to me was a no brainer. This is not an original car, so I don't try to use the original parts like PMB restores original parts. I'm using the best of the best in terms of brakes. So that's why a PMB does great work. No questions asked. Ian Carpenter is saying use increase the stroke for horsepower. Yes, yeah. If you want to increase the torque, um, you can increase the stroke, and that's a proven way. Like no questions asked. Like that works every time. The the disadvantage is it doesn't rev as high, and so on a sports car, I like the high revving, exciting sort of drive when you're on a track, and so when you're on a track like that, sometimes you need to rev to get to the next corner. It has advantages of having a wider power band when it's short stroke. So I for a Porsche, I sort of like the short stroke. But you're right, you can definitely get power out of a stroker engine. Um, Chris has joined us and loves the never finish attitude. I mean, when you're a car guy, you're always like a car guy at heart. So you just you just keep playing, right? Build a second 911 once it's finished, and you can choose which one to sell. I wish it was that easy. I mean, um, it's such a time commitment to get the car to this level, and to be honest with you guys, it's a little overkill. I overkilled the paint job because I can. When you do it yourself, you can, and when you're doing it for like, this is essentially my first time. I told you I painted one other car like in 1990, like 1994. So it was everything is completely changed. It's basically starting over. It's like basically my first paint job with today's materials. And because I'm learning as I go, I have completely overkilled it for the intended purpose of this car. But I did it that way because A, I like to learn, and B, I like to it doesn't cost me anything extra to take it to the highest level I can do. So when I start something, I want to finish it to my best of my ability. And if it doesn't cost me any more money to spend an extra, 3 or 4 weeks sanding, even though I hate sanding, it's gonna pay for itself in the end. But it does take time. So to build a whole separate car, um, that just takes a lot of time. So I'm trying to get something I can drive, and so that's the goal for this year. I have two cars in the works, both of which are going to be coming home to this garage, and the goal is to make them drive as soon as possible, even if it has the expense of a little bit less quality. That's just how my plan for this year is. So Dave Boyer has joined us. That's awesome. Dave is probably one of my first subscribers, I think. He's been along for the ride and always commenting, and you feel like you start to know these people, which is really cool. Ian Carpenter says hi. Um, Alan Vance just came on. How did this whole project start? So I think um, this video will be a replay. I think it'll be available as a replay. You can kind of go back and listen to it. But the answer is, this project started as a filler project. I'm in the process of restoring a 356, and that car was sent out to be professionally painted. You're going to see that car in about 2 or 3 weeks. Oh yeah, yeah, awesome. 2 or 3 weeks. My son just brought me a water because he's watching me cough. So the 356 is a lifelong project for me. Uh, that is a big passion of mine, but I've learned to like this 911 too. So essentially, I bought it as a spacer project. While I had space in the garage, my 356 was being professionally painted. I thought I would just fit this right in and get this car painted, and then I'd have two Porsches, right? So I picked up this car on Craigslist. I fixed the damage. I bought the parts, and it's just now getting ready for paint. And you've seen all the modifications I've done. Now I've really learned to become attached to this car. It's my passion is in all cars, but this 911 has really has gone kind of above and beyond what I thought it was going to be. It was going to be a spacer project. That's why it's low budget. I just wanted to have something else I could kind of beat around, and I do intend to beat this car up, you guys. You feel like I'm a perfectionist, and that is true, but this to me is always going to be a $4,000 car. So I'm not afraid to drive it. It's that's how it started. It's just something that I had space in the garage while the other car was being painted. The other car has been painted. It's been in the waiting for about 5 months. It's been waiting in storage, just chilling out, not getting anything done to it. So it's time to bring that car home, and and I'm not going to stop working on the 911. I'm going to work on a little bit of both. So you're going to see a big announcement in the next couple of weeks about my 356. I'll talk a little bit more about that car when it comes into the garage, but that has been my passion, and that is where I've learned almost everything that I've learned. I talked about that car in the comments, but um, that is really the car that's taught me everything I know. So I'm going to share that history with you guys. I bought that car when I was 24 years old, and I've had the chance to drive it for a long time. Took it apart for a complete restoration, and it's still apart. So you guys are going to see the best of my 356. That is what this passion started with, and that is where it's going to continue. Going to keep working on the 911, of course. I think the 911 might actually drive before the 356 because the 911 is designed to be a hot rod. It's basically just an engine, a driver's seat, and that's it. Some brakes and a gas tank. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty quick to make it drive. Alan Vance says, thanks for the answer. Cool. Thanks for the water. I'm definitely getting over a cold. So I think I've covered sort of where I got the car, what we've done to it, and then what's coming up next. Definitely making a drive and taking you guys on some of the roads around here and some of the events. So that's the kind of the future of this channel is to kind of break out of the garage and really share what is the best part, I think, of living in Southern California is a lot of these events. So raise your hand or let me know in the comments. Is anybody coming to Porsche Week? Porsche Week is the end of February, I think, beginning of March here in Southern California. It is based on the LA toy and literature meet for Porsche. It's kind of an indoor swap meet. It's held at LAX Hilton. That's, I think, on Saturday. But the week prior is just a bunch of open houses. It is what they call Porsche Week. Everyone opens their doors. A lot of the 356 people and the 911 people and the shops in the local area open up their doors for open house, and it's a bunch of tech sessions, a way to meet people. The cars get together, and then the event is on Saturday, and then it's like an indoor swap meet, and then Sunday is another swap meet, outdoor swap meet with a big show in Anaheim. So I'm going to be going to that show and hopefully running into some of you guys. Let me know if you plan on attending. Would love to connect and talk more about cars. Showed up late to the live stream. This is from I don't know if it's Polo 21. Showed up late, but engineering approach. Yeah, it's kind of hard to take the engineer out. Um, as an engineer, we're sort of trained to take a big problem and like chop it up into little problems. So that's what I do week by week. I just work on something a little bit at a time. And I don't think too much about the things that I know are like bolt-on items. So I haven't given a lot of thought to things like the wheels, for instance. I mean, obviously, I flared the fenders. That allows me to have a lot of wheel choices. I rolled the fender lips and stuff. So I'm thinking in the future, but I'm really focused on, taking off a little chunk. It's like eating an elephant. You start like one bite at a time. So every week I think, okay, this is what I'm going to do this week. YouTube has motivated me to just do that commitment to having something to upload every week. So I take a little chunk and I work on that until it's done. And I hope what you guys take out of this is that you have to just make a little progress, a little bit at a time. Sometimes you got to pop up and sort of look at the overall project and have a vision and have a theme, but it's basically just tackling small projects, solving one problem at a time. And of course, I like to geek out on some of the mechanics of the build. That's why I spent time, and hopefully this helps the community. A lot of people, when they make modifications to their car, they just like to sort of copy what someone else has done, and or maybe a vendor has something available. So they're like, well, maybe I need this for my car. It must be good because someone so sells it. And I like to really understand, what's the goal of the car and how is this going to help me. So I did a bunch of analysis on what the modifications to the chassis actually do and whether or not it makes an improvement. So all the torsional rigidity stuff, um, I found it really fun to sort of understand it and then talk about it and give recommendations on what it does. So for my car, it's not really a street car. It's more of a kind of track car, inspired track car. It'll be used on the street. So I'm looking at the suspension modifications and the chassis strength as one of my goals. So that will be that's kind of my engineering approach. I think you're going to see a lot more engineering stuff when it comes time to like the engine build and also some of the custom parts. I'm going to be doing a lot of custom parts for this car, machined out of aluminum and stuff. I operate CNC machines and do a bunch of that stuff. So uh, hopefully you'll see some more engineering type work in the future as it comes time to bolt stuff on. So Ian Carpenter is coming in from Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's cool. Definitely reach out. Maybe we can meet up. Um, I may have an open house myself. I don't know. I've been considering doing some. I've been considering doing some more training, here at my shop, and let me know if you guys would be interested in doing like a hands-on workshop. I'm thinking about another way to contribute would be to um, have like a hands-on open house, not just to look at the car, but maybe to learn something. So one of the most common searched terms that people find my channel on YouTube, and there's not that many of you guys. I mean, it's a small channel, right? But the people who do find me are searching for welding, and I'm a big fan of the TIG welding. So maybe I can do like a class on TIG welding. Let me know if you guys would be up for that. Obviously, it probably wouldn't be a free day, but it would be a way to just get together and learn a new skill. I think welding, especially on the TIG welding, it's completely different than everything else you find on the internet. When you're welding thin sheet metal, it's different. Like the skills you learn in welding school, and I'm not a certified welder, but the thicker metal stuff is totally different than the thin metal. And so over the years, it's been like 20 something years, I've learned sort of what it takes to weld thin sheet metal and to have a good finished result. So anyone can stick two pieces of metal together, but how you get it flat, how you get the distortion out, all that stuff is definitely a skill that takes time to learn, and if anyone can learn it, it just how long you devote to it is something I think I can help you guys with. Maybe shortcut the learning process a little bit. I am a merit badge counselor for the Boy Scouts, and I've taught some like 11-year-olds how to weld, and we have yeah we've done the TIG welder, but um, James Iverson. Oh, another mechanical engineer. Yeah. Um, yeah. So perfect is good enough until something better comes along. Yep. That's why the car will never be finished. It's like an evolving project. You just kind of keep improving it, and then once it drives and you like do some track days and you want to improve it again, it's like you get the bug to figure out. Okay, like here's how it works. Here's how you improve it. Like just keep doing it, and it's like an addicting habit of understanding how things work. Sometimes I think engineering is kind of like a curse where you know you have the means to understand something, and then you can't stop thinking about it because you want to understand exactly how it works. So that it's like a curse because you can't just take something at face value. You have to like dig in and understand how it works. And I think that's what sort of drives some of the quality is like when like for instance on the painting process, I don't understand how all the chemicals work. I'm not a chemical engineer, but I do have that methodology about don't don't take a step unless you understand like why, and it's always asking the question about why, and how it works that really drives it to the best possible result. So that's uh that's definitely an influence for sure. Dave Boyer, I'm out in the garage welding on my car I bought from Texas. So Texas is a good place to buy a car, or California, because they're sort of pretty dry. But the fact that you're welding on it probably means that maybe it has a little bit of rust. I don't know. So I'm happy that you guys are out, working on your projects. Um, I'm probably going to end this pretty soon, you guys. I typically don't spend time on Saturdays. I'm always working on my car during the week, and then I reserve the weekends to hang out with my family. So we're going to go do something today. But I wanted to really thank all you guys for watching and joining me on the live stream. It's been, like I said, like a 2-year journey where this car has come from a car that really nobody else wanted. I wasn't the first person to look at it. I wanted something to work on while my other car was away being painted, and this is really evolved into something that I think you guys will like it. Five more days till it gets painted. There's still a little bit of sanding to do. I'm still evolving it, so you guys know that I finished sanding everything. But until the 5 days is up, I have continued to find things I can improve. Right, so I did look into there was one ripple in the door, um, and I didn't like the way the reflections were. The door was really pretty nice, but up high, which is like the most visible area, right where the mirror attaches. I think maybe the mirror had been hit or something. It had a little bit of a dip in there in the reflection, so you could only see it when it was fully finished in 600 grit. And I've used wax and grease remover and water and stuff to see the reflections. And I ended up working on that this week. I got the ripple out, and it was kind of a learning experience because I had already sanded it to 600, and I thought, well, I just need to put more primer on it, and then I'm going to sand it again. And I didn't want to start over. I just wanted to like sand it back with 600. And I learned the hard way that you can't make a car straight with like 600 grit. It just tends to follow whatever shape you already have underneath it. So I I had to put more primer back on it, and I did start over. I went back to 220 with a really long block and guide coat, and it really highlighted where it was low. And sure enough, it when you start back over with those lower grits, that's really what causes the car to be straight. So you can't just cut corners. 600 grit doesn't make the car straight. It just sort of creates like finer scratches. So that was an interesting lesson this week. Didn't make a video about it, but it's too hard to see in a video camera, anyways. That's something I did this week. The uh, the 5 more days, 5 more days, and it should be fully painted. There's just a couple minor things to work on, like some undercoating on the inside passenger area. I think if I have time, I'll shoot that before. And then the other thing that if I have time, I will work on the bumpers, because the bumpers, like here, you can see it in this live stream. The bumper is not painted or not ready for paint, and I've been debating on the color of the bumpers. At one point I was going to paint them all yellow, and then I thought, well, maybe an accent color would be great, like different bumpers with like maybe a stripe on the side with kind of a matching color to the bumpers. I'm considering doing that with the bumpers. Let me know what you guys think. Having an accent color, uh, and also just from a paint supply management point of view, I don't want to run out of paint. So I think I will be painting the bumpers here in my home garage, whether they're yellow or some other accent color. I'm kind of holding off on the bumpers, but if I have extra time this week and I have enough paint, I might start prepping at least the front bumper for paint. So that's the exciting news, you guys. Five more days to paint. I have the paint booth is booked. I have the trailer ready, and crossing my fingers that there's no strange weather. I have to go over a mountain pass to get to the paint booth. It's like a 6,000 foot mountain pass, and so hopefully there's no strange weather. California is usually pretty nice, so that's the plan, you guys. Thanks for joining. I'll check the questions one more time. Maybe get a Dr. Evil Trans course. Dr. Evil. I'm not. I'm not familiar with that one. P Car Crazy, so funny. I knew you had a YouTube channel, but I never saw it until I found researching welding for my latest project. Yeah. So, I mean, welding is a huge skill to have on any car project, and so I have my own thoughts on welding, and hopefully some of you guys have learned something. I'm a big fan of TIG welding. Um, Ian Carpenter, thanks so much for sharing, even while you're sick. I've had this cold. I mean, I've been kind of coughing for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and all these videos, it's been kind of hard. Um, it's next to oh yeah, Dave Boyer has a California car too. Awesome. Analysis paralysis. Yep. It's cursive engineering. Thanks for the show. Yep, you got it. It's a pleasure hearing your thoughts on building out a dream. Yeah. I know James. He's one of the Patreon supporters, which I definitely appreciate. And I know from talking with him on Patreon that he has a few projects himself. He's trying to work on. I think he's taken 2 cars and building them into one, which I totally get that method. That's my approach too. Like I buy more than I need. I take what I keep. I keep what I want for myself, and then I sell everything else. And it makes sure that you're not spending on like every single part that you need. I like to buy in bulk and then sell what I don't need. So I end up making money on that, and that's how you build your dream. It just takes a little longer, right? So that's how I do it. Thanks again, guys, for joining me. Please enjoy your Saturday. Hopefully, this video will be available as a replay. I'm just giving a little bit of history on this project and kind of where it's going. We made some announcements on the engine choice. Um, we made some decisions on the the future of the car to basically make it drive as quickly as possible. I don't have a lot of other things to share with you. I mentioned the brakes. The brakes are going to be pretty special. Please stay tuned for that stuff, and just keep watching it progress. 2020 should be the year in which it drives, and hopefully we'll see you guys maybe at the Porsche week end of next month. Thanks again, everyone. Take care.